Hello and welcome to another edition of Wi-Fi Soft training videos. In this training videos, we are going to check how you can manage users and their data within UniBox controllers. Since UniBox is a all-in-one controller, it comes with its own database where all the user information can be stored on the device itself. So uh, all the users who have used the system and the users who have registered online, they are all stored within the controller, and the usage and the session information of each of those users is also stored along with it. So let's explore how the user management section of UniBox works. To view all the users in the system, you must go under Authentication, User Management, and click on Users section. When you click on Users, it will show you the list of all the users that are stored in the database. This includes users who have registered for free, the users who have registered through various login methods. So they could be registered using LDAP or social media. They could be paid users, they could be vouchers, and so on. So once you log in, you'll get the list of all the users. If you want to look at more number of users per page, you can just select the right option here and it will show you more number of users on the same page. For every user entry, you will find that there is username, on which controller this user was registered, on which user group the user belongs to, the type of user, whether it's a free, paid, it authenticated using LDAP, and so on, the status of the user right now, the creation date, and various operations that you can perform on that user account. So let's see what all a particular user account holds. So I'm going to click on one of the users. To look at the details of a particular user, you can click on the eye icon where it shows you the information about the user. So the first part of the user provides all the information, the personal information, as well as the restrictions that are enforced on the user. So this particular user, the first entity is called the username. The username is unique for every user, and so for every user, the username is composed of the real username, which is the unique part, along with a realm, and both of them are divided using an ampersand sign. The realm is used to differentiate different users from different hotspots, as well as is used for roaming purpose. The controller defines what controller the user belongs to. The group is basically an entity that allows you to logically group all the users into a particular way. So for example, in an organization, you can group the employees based on their different departments, finance, accounting, engineering, quality control, and so on, or in whatever way you choose. Most of the other fields are self-explanatory. You will find that the dates are the creation date, the expiry date are defined. On the right hand side, you will find that there are several restrictions that could be imposed on the user. Now, the restrictions has a two-level hierarchy. If the user belongs to a particular group, all the users under that group will automatically inherit the restrictions from that group. But it is possible to override some of those restrictions by making an entry of those restrictions in the user section. We'll come to that when we discuss about creation of new users. But here you'll find that there are the max device limit, the session timeout, daily session count or daily time quota, daily bandwidth quota, upload rate, and download rate are different types of restrictions that you can impose on a particular user session. Below this section, there is an option to test user login. This is just to verify whether this particular user can get correctly authenticated by the Radius server. So I'm going to click on this and you'll find that the authentication was successful. In addition to that, you will also find some of the parameters that the Radius server returns or have configured for this user. These parameters define the session and its restrictions. Uh, Below that, you'll find whether the user is currently online or offline. For all the online users, you will get the real-time statistics here about the upload usage, download usage, the rates at which the user is currently uploading or downloading, the user online time, the idle time, and some other information. There is also an option here to terminate the user session under the logout section. So if a user is currently online, you can just click on the logout button and terminate the user session on the network. Below that, you'll find the total usage for this user since it was created. So as you can see, this particular user had 502 total sessions and total time usage of 17 days and 14 hours. And that was the amount of data that the user has consumed, and total usage was 33.3 GB. Below this, you'll find what were the last 5 sessions of that user. So the start time and the end time will tell you the time when the user logged in on the network and when the user was logged out of the network. In addition to that, it will also show you the IP address, the MAC address of the device the user has logged in from, along with the total number of upload and download uh, 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 bandwidth that was consumed during that session. You can notice also that the user's devices are also logged in, so you'll find out what kind of devices the user has been using on the network. Below this, you'll find the last 7 days of usage, and lastly you'll see a graphical representation of the user's data consumption. So the pie chart shows you total upload as well as download since the user was created, and the right hand side will show you the last 5 sessions, the total usage of upload and download. Now, in addition to this, you'll find that there are various operations you can do for this particular user. The edit section will allow you to edit the customer's information. So for example, if you want to change the user group, you can just select here and you can assign the user to a different group. The shared account is used for cases where you want to share that account with multiple users and not enforce certain restrictions. On the next tab, you will find that the general information can be edited, like the address and the city and the phone numbers and so on. And the last tab will show you the restrictions on that particular user. So the total timeout or the idle timeout restrictions can be enforced. The daily time quota and the daily bandwidth quota will enforce how much data or time the user can use within that day. Similarly, the total bandwidth quota will enforce how much total bandwidth to be allocated to this particular user. So let's take an example, like if you want to allocate 500 MB for this particular user. So this means that this user can use 500 MB of total bandwidth, and after that the user will automatically expire. The last two parameters are for the upload and the download rate that you can enforce on the user session, and the max device limit will enforce how many devices the user can be allowed to log in from, and the concurrency limit will enforce how many simultaneous sessions for this user should be allowed. uh, Next, obviously the delete option will allow you to delete that particular user record. Now, please note that the delete will also delete all the history of the user, including all the sessions and the activity that the user had done on the network. The change password will allow you to change the password for the user in case the user has forgotten and the user has called up the tech support for changing his password. The expire option will allow you to expire the user account. Once the user account has expired, the user will no longer be able to authenticate on the network. Um, the next tab will show you what are the different MAC addresses or the devices that are registered under this particular user. So as you can see that this particular user has 3 devices which are registered under his account. There's an Intel laptop, there's a HP laptop, and there's a Xiaomi mobile device that was registered. And each of them will have a account or a controller and a user group associated with them. The next section will show you all the sessions of this particular user since the user was created. So as you can see that there are 502 entries of this user, and each and every session of this user is logged in the system. Finally, the authentication history will show you how when the user was authenticated, at what time he was authenticated, and from what devices he was authenticated, and whether the authentication was successful or not. So as usual, you can search for a particular MAC address or a particular date, or if you want to search the user sessions, you can do so from the respective tabs. You can also export the session history of the user if you want to store that information in an Excel file. The next section that we are going to discuss about under users is how to create a new user. Now, please remember that most of the users will register for the service through the captive portal. So when the user connects to the Wi-Fi hotspot and is presented the captive portal, the user will generally create his account through the captive portal. But there are many instances where the admin may have to create a user, in which case he has to click on the plus sign and just follow the instructions. Now the username is basically a identity of the user, so you have to give a right username to the user, which should be unique within the controller. Similarly, the password should be at least 6 digit, and it's a good practice to use different combinations of alphanumeric characters and special characters when creating your passwords. The controller will decide to which hotspot this user is associated with. So a controller will be the user will get can get access to that particular hotspot when it's assigned to a particular controller. And lastly, the user groups will decide to which particular group this user will belong. Please remember, as I told earlier, that the user group decides what restrictions to be enforced. So generally, the restrictions are configured on the user group, and all the users under that user group will inherit those restrictions. Similarly, the general information will talk about like the address and the phone numbers, email addresses, and so on and so forth. And the restrictions will enforce the restrictions that we have discussed earlier during our discussion. Once the users are created, they will be able to log in through the captive portal once either through a username password area or through any other section that has been associated with it. Notice that there is an import as well as an export option here. The import option allows you to import a set of users in the system without having to individually add a user. So if you have a list of users, let's say you want to import about 100 users in the system, you just have to put them into a comma separated values format and import that particular file inside the system. So while importing, you need to select which controller those users will belong to, and to which group those users will belong to. And then you have to choose the CSV file to import. Let's go back. Similarly, for the export option, you can click on the export option and it will export all the list of users that have been configured under this UniBox. Now, for a particular user, you can see there are a few more actions to be done. Then there is the edit option, there's a change password option, there's an expire option, and there's a last option which shows you the user activity. So here you can export the user activity. So for example, here you can export the user activity report either in a PDF format or a CSV format, and export the detailed user activity report in PDF or CSV format. So the summarized user activity will show you uh, what all um, uh, what all URLs the user has browsed, or and a summarized version of this report will be shown to the user. So this is a user summary about the total usage, total download, total how many devices were used, when it was created, and so on. So similarly, the activity report will show you all the browsing history of that user in PDF or in Excel format. Uh, Remember that these users have, each of these users also has a MAC address, one or more MAC addresses defined along with it. So in order to see what all MAC addresses are configured in the system, you can click on the MAC login option under user management, and you'll be able to see all the MAC addresses that are registered against their respective users. So a MAC address is essentially a unique identity for every device. So when a device gets connected to a Wi-Fi hotspot, the MAC address of that Wi-Fi hotspot is registered under UniBox. And when the user connects to that hotspot again, the MAC address of that device will automatically get validated through the captive portal by the UniBox, and will allow the user to log in. So these users will never have to go through the captive portal authentication experience once they have registered for the first time. This significantly improves the usability of your hotspot, because the users don't have to keep on logging over again and again until their plan or their expiry date is reached. So every user has certain restrictions when they log in. Either they are based on time or data, or some other parameter, number of devices that are allowed. So whenever a MAC address authenticates, the original restrictions of the user are also applied to that particular MAC address. So this basically summarizes all the user management functions of UniBox. Again, thank you for watching, and see you in the next video.